Hello students. For this week, we will be learning about rates and unit rates. So what's a rate? A rate is a ratio of two quantities using different units of measure. Now we always see this daily. For example, when you drive, you see the speed limit. It says 20 miles per hour. So the miles and the hour are the units of measure that's being compared. When you go to the grocery store, you see apples and bananas. It's either they sell for $1 per pound of banana. So those are two units of measure, the dollar amount and the pounds of bananas. When you look for a job, you see your hourly rate. It says $30 per hour. You see the word per. So the word per is a word that separates the units of measure. The per, it means for every. So $30 for every hour. So these are rates and unit rates. So a unit rate compares a quantity to one unit of another quantity. So we usually see the word per for this case. It means for, so per means for every. Okay? Now, so some common units that we usually use. It's miles per gallon, cost per pound, miles per hour, earnings per hour. Even when you're in PE, you measure your heartbeats per minute. So those are the common unit rates. So how do we know if we have equivalent rates? So it says here, equivalent rates have the same unit rate. Now we talked about equivalent ratios before. So it's actually the same way you find equivalent rates. When you find equivalent ratios, it's either we divide or multiply the numerator and the denominator by the same number. The easiest would be to compare if the two rates have the same unit rate because you're just going to be dividing. Okay? So now let's have some problem samples. Number one, it says write a rate that represents the situation. Remember, a rate is still a ratio that uses different units. So when you say write a rate, we can write it as a fraction or as a word. For example, 45 meters in 6 seconds. So you can write it this way, 45 meters and colon 6 seconds. Or usually we write it as a fraction. So we can say 45 meters in 6 seconds. So either of these two would be correct. Now remember, we're just writing a rate, not a unit rate. For number two, so we got 3 meters in 4 seconds. So that is how you write a rate. Now let's move on to number three. It says write a unit rate. So how do we find a unit rate? Now by definition, it says a unit rate is a comparison of one quantity to another. So for this case, let's write the rate first. It says $45 for 9 pounds. So the rate is $45 for 9 pounds. So when we find the unit rate, remember we need to compare one quantity, so 1 pound, to the other quantity. So how do we get 9 into 1? So we're actually just dividing 45 divided by 9, and that gives us exactly 5, right? So it's going to be $5 for 1 pound. So we're actually dividing by 9. $45 over for 9 pounds. That means we're paying $5 for every pound. Let's try number 4. Now it says here there are 8 kittens in 4 rooms. So what is the unit rate? So in one room, how many kittens are there? Exactly, there are going to be 2 kittens in one room. So what did we just do? We divided this by 4. See, we're just dividing by the same number. That means these two rates are equivalent. Okay, so remember, it's just 8 divided by 4. That's the fastest way to do it. Now, what's the most important thing to remember is we need to include the units of measure, because when we talk about rates would be a comparison of two quantities with different units. So if you just put these number 8 and 4 did 2, we don't know what those numbers mean. So we need to write the units of measure in our answers. Now, let's do number 5. $96 for 8 hours of work. So $96, now this should be in this side. Let me check that one. Let me see if I can minimize this back side. No, it won't. There we go. Better. Now, number 5. It says $96 for 8 hours of work. So let's write the rate first. $96 and 8 hours of work. So you get paid for how many dollars per hour or for 1 hour? So exactly, we're just dividing 96 divided by 8. That should give you exactly 12. So this would be $12 for every hour. So remember, we are writing the units of measure. Do not forget that. There's 54 biscuits from 9 batches. So how many biscuits will there be for every batch? We do the same thing. We're dividing. We're dividing by 9. So 54 biscuits divided by 9, that should give us 6 biscuits. Now, if you ask me, how do we know what to divide? Remember, we're getting the unit rate. So that means your denominator would be 1. It says per batch. That means 1 batch. This is per room, 1 room. Per pound, for every pound, or 1 pound. So we're just dividing the numerator by its denominator. So always make sense of the problem. All right? Now let's try this out. Number 7. Now let's decide when the rates are equivalent. Remember, the rates are equivalent if they have the same unit rates. Or if we multiply the numerator and denominator with the same number and we get the same rate, then they're equivalent. So let's try this out. So I'm going to write this out as a rate, 9 miles for 3 hours. Okay? Now, if I get the rates for this one, what would this be if I were to get the unit rate? Yep, this would be divided by 3 and divided by 3 because we get 1 hour as your denominator. So 9 miles divided by 3, that will be 3 miles in 1 hour. Now, let's check the other one, this one right here. 27 and 6. I'm going to use another pen. So separate that. Okay, so we got 27 miles over 6 hours, or in 6 hours. Let's get the unit rate. If we divide this by 6, because we're getting 1 hour, what would it be? What is 27 divided by 6? If you use your calculator, you will get 4.5 miles. Now, notice when we compare rates, we have the same denominator. 1 hour in 1 hour. So in 1 hour, the first rate is 3 miles for 1 hour, and the second rate is the same number of hour, is 4.5 miles. So are the rates equivalent? Not equivalent. So, oops, not that one. So the rates are not equivalent because the unit rates are not the same. Now, there's 2 more ways to do this, but let me just use the unit rates to compare rates, okay? Now, number 8. So for number 8, we got 152 points in 8 games. So we have 152 points in 8 games. And the other one would be 171 points in 9 games. Now let's compare the unit rate. Okay, make it easier. So when you say unit rate, is for every game, so 1 game. There we go. Now let's divide. What's 152 divided by 8? And that should give us 19 points per game, or for every game. 171 points divided by 9 games, that should give us The same thing, 19 points per game. So that means these two rates are equivalent because the unit rates are the same. For one game, you get 19 points, and the other rate is the unit rate is the same thing. For one game, you get 19 points. Now let's do number 9. So 35 meters in 25 minutes. I get that. And then we got 15 meters in 10 minutes. All right, so let's compare the unit rates. So we'll know if the rates are equivalent. So this will be 1 minute, and the other one will be 1 minute. Now, how do we get 25 to 1? We're just dividing by 25. So 35 divided by 25, you would get 1.4 meters in 1 minute. M means meters. So 15 meters in 10 minutes. If we divide 15 divided by 10, that should give us exactly 1.5 meters in 1 minute. Now, are the rates the same? No, they're not. In 1 minute, one rate has a unit rate of 1.4 meters in 1 minute, and the other one has a unit rate of 1.5 meters in 1 minute. So with the same number of minutes, one is less than the other. So these two are not equivalent. Okay, now let's do the last number. So the last one says 30 minutes for $3 and 1 hour for 6 minutes. Now remember, when you compare rates, the units should be the same. So this is in dollars, so we're okay. Both are in dollars, but the other one is in minutes and the other one's in an hour. So we need to change either the 30 minutes into hours or the 1 hour into minutes. And we know that 1 hour is equivalent to how many minutes? 60 minutes. So now when we write our rate, it should be 30 minutes for $3, and we got 60 minutes for $6. Now there's two ways to do this, or there's a lot of ways to do this, but for the sake of this topic, let's just get the unit rate. So if we divide 30 minutes divided by 3, you will get 10 minutes for every, oops, my dollar doesn't look right, for every dollar, right? Now in here, 60 minutes divided by 6, that means 10 minutes for every dollar. So are our rates the same? Yep. So these two rates are equivalent. So we're going to write the word equivalent. All right. So hopefully that helps.